The debate has gone on for a long time and will continue to go on for many more years. And that debate is the blame over the death of Optimus Prime. Many blame Hot Rod, but guess what? I don't hold it against Rodimus Prime. Even though, yeah, I can see it looked like a conspiracy. It probably really wasn't. This is Mike from the Titanium Hangar, and we're here today to talk to you about all of the toys that were made for Rodimus Prime, starting back in G1, up to modern, and of course, what are our masterpiece options? How many or how few are available? So let's get right into this. It all started in 1986 with this G1 Rodimus Prime figure. Now, Rodimus Prime, of course, is the bigger version and the supreme, more expensive version of this Hot Rod. And as most G1 figures weren't that great, they really were just simple bricks that barely had any articulation. Well, so was this figure. I had this one as a kid, and I wasn't really too excited about it, but I liked the fact that it was taller. I always had an obsession with size. Bigger was better. And so I preferred this one to the Hot Rod, but I think the Hot Rod has a more interesting transformation than this. But even as a kid, I felt that this was a step down in engineering and a step down in design from Optimus Prime. This never touched the Optimus Prime, but I really felt like they were trying to copy it, and it did feel sort of dumbed down versus an Optimus Prime. We've seen it reissued in several different commemorative series reissues, and it was reissued in 2002, 2004, 2012 in different types of packaging, but really it was the same toy put out multiple times in the modern era. And we've recently even seen Hot Rod re-released at Walmart. Things started getting more interesting with Rodimus Prime in 2006 when they released the Classics version. Now this was pretty much the same thing as the Hot Rod, except they did do some modifications to it. They changed it a little bit. The slight changes to the mold to beef it up, make it look a little bit better, but still, it's really just the same mold. Slightly different head, a few different things to it. But hey, they were trying, and they tried to give us something just a little bit better and a little bit different. I thought that mold was really cool when it was out. We also saw the introduction of third party here, where third party add-on kits to make your figure into a more impressive looking Chug. And third party really surrounded the Chug life back then. Third party was all about that. This is the fans Project TFX04 upgrade kit. And yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we had back then for third party. And this was before Masterpiece third party. And made for an interesting upgrade to a Chug figure. In 2007, we got to see the Titanium series. Now, these were largely made of die-cast, and it was it was slightly changed and repainted for a 2017 release. And I know that I always thought these were interesting, but they were so small. But I love the fact that they were die-cast. And it sure was something that paid homage to G1, even though the G1 figure had no die-cast in it. Now we had Alternator figures, and the Alternator series of figures was pretty interesting because it had super realistic looking alt modes, and in this case, this one was a Ford GT, and it's called a Ford GT40. And I know that the Alternators had some pretty complex transformations, and to me, it was the dipping of the toe into a Masterpiece realm before we actually got to Masterpiece realm. But these were really cool figures, and I didn't get too heavily deep into them myself. But I have to say that I always thought that they were pretty cool. And for some reason, I didn't even know they made the Rodimus back then. And we got subsequent repaints into Mirage. And of course, everything old is new again, and they reissued the Classics in a 2-pack for, I believe this was an exclusive somewhere during the reveal of the Shield time. And of course, you've got all kinds of extra little stuff in this set. But the thing was that it was packed with a different looking Cyclonus, which was more tune accurate. And I gotta say, this kind of stuff was what we were after back in the day. These things were pretty cool. Now, out of all of the things on the list, this is probably the strangest of them, as we did end up getting a repaint of the Springer mold to be Rodimus. And it was pretty much the exact same thing with a different head and a different paint job. And he had all the same alt modes and all of that. And I gotta say, that's pretty cool. I never had this figure, but it sort of makes sense in a way. But where's the Winnebago? Where'd the Winnebago back part go? Now, there was a Combiner Wars version that was made in Legends side of Rodimus. And yes, this is when this first confused me. I was like, but he's not a small character. Why would they make him that small? But they did, and it was a thing. But that wouldn't fit in with your modern day Legends, like this Papa Toys. Now, Titan's Return gave us a little head, and that looks a lot like Rodimus to me. And I really do like the Titan Returns line. I know a lot of people act like it's not that great and look down on it, but that line gave us so many G1 characters that looked so G1, not quite like Siege, but the cool aspect of getting a headmaster when those headmaster heads are so hard to find for G1. Just having a plethora of them just everywhere. That was a lot of fun. Now, Power of the Primes gets a lot of grief for this, but I thought this was a really cool idea. When they brought out the Optimus and the Rodimus and all these figures, I thought that it was cool that you had a hot rod that transforms into a Rodimus. You got the effect, and they did it with Orion Pax, Optimus Prime. They did it with several others, but I thought this was just so ingenious. Now, I think the execution was kind of poor. It was poor execution of an extremely good idea, but I still don't think the figure's horrible. I think that it's mediocre, but I still like it. I still have it, and I still think it's really pretty cool. And, of course, you got the black repaint, because why wouldn't you? And I think that one even looks cooler. I think this one just looks so much better, just the way the colors are and the way it's pulled off. And it just makes those shoulders not look so bad, just the way the paint scheme is. Now for the fun part. We're getting into the masterpiece part here. And the thing about it is that I think it's a good, solid representation. And we also got a Toys R Us US release. Now, the differences between these two, the Japanese version or the original, is more tune accurate, and then the US Toys R Us release is closer to the toy accurate. And if you look at a few things that are different, you're going to notice on the left side, the Japanese one has an outline of the flame. There's no outline of the flame on the right in the US version. And then the lower legs are black or maybe dark charcoal. And that's on the Japanese version. On the left American version, they're red with the kind of a toy sticker look to it. Now, I prefer the one on the right, maybe just because I've had that one for so long and I've just gotten used to it. But the one on the left, I do like that flame and that outline. I think that just pops. Also, the colors are slightly different. The Japanese release is a little bit darker. The US release is a little bit lighter. But in the end, either one looks great. Now, a lot of people talking about we need an update to this figure. A lot of people talking about the fact that we need one that's not as fragile and doesn't break as much. It's not as easy to break, easier to transform. A lot of good points there. But in the end, this still nails the aesthetic. This thing still holds up today. And it's been out for, what, feels like a decade. Maybe it hasn't been a decade, but it feels like a decade. This guy already has the plus line treatment because it wasn't an actual real world car that he transformed into. It was a space racer hot rod car that was of made up origin, and they could do it however they wanted to. Now, with that said, could he see an upgrade? Well, yeah, I mean, of course they could always come out with another one. Would this be a prime candidate for Takara to completely revamp and remake, because they've gotten so much flack over it, over the quality of it, over the fragility of it? But then again, how would they make it again and it not be as fragile? Well, some people think they know how. And there's a little something called DX9's carry. Now, I'm going to get it out of the way. I don't think it looks G1 enough for my shelf, and I passed on it. But I've never heard anyone say anything negative about it. Everybody loves the build quality. Everybody loves the posability. Everybody loves the fact that the transformation is pretty smooth, and everybody says great things about this figure. And I almost picked it up, but in the end, I did not prefer the look of it. But you could look at it and you could say, I know that's Rodimus Prime. But when you look at the Takara Hasbro version, you can look at that and you say, but the other one looks more tuned. Now, if, say, another third-party company comes along and says they're not happy with the Rodimus options, I just can't think of any third-party company that could make this. I just don't think... Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Maybe Fans Toys? Okay. Somebody just hollered at the screen, maybe Fans Toys. So I guess I'll have to go with that. Maybe Fans Toys could take them on. Maybe Fans Toys could make one that looks better. Who knows? Now, we know that we had issues with the Hot Rod, and Fans Toys put out an old mold that didn't have the articulation. It wasn't not the greatest transformation. It had paint chipping, which we love the paint, but we don't want it chipped off. And there were a few other issues, and in the end, Takara's mold held up better with the transformation, held up better in the alt mode, and held up better in posability. But I still think Fans Toys looks better and looks the part, and if Fans Toys actually could pull off a Rodimus Prime that looks better than Takara's, gosh, talk about mind blown again. Now, X-Transbots MMC have proven themselves to be good, if not great, in the space, offer excellent figures with decent transformations, and both of them are getting even better and closer. But could either of them take on Takara when it comes to a Rodimus? That's to be decided if they were to shoot at it. But I don't see either of them even attempting to take that on. So there were some other oddball Rodimus figures that were made over the years that really didn't catch my attention. A couple of other repaints, such as a dark Rodimus repaint, and I think that looks sweet. But let me know what you think about this character. Do you think we need a better one? Or are you just going to stick with getting what's already out there? The Takara, is that going to fill the spot on your shelf forever? What do you think about this? Like and subscribe, and of course, tie your deer and hang her out.